There comes a point in every transaction where it feels like the deal might not come together. Sometimes it's during the initial negotiations, but more often than not, it's right after inspections when the buyer submits their request for repairs. No matter how well maintained a home is, there's often something wrong. As a buyer's agent, how should you counsel your clients when it comes to making a request for repairs? Or as a listing agent, how should you counsel your clients when it comes time to respond to said request? Let's use a real world example. I was trolling Reddit yesterday. Yeah, I know. And found this beauty of a post from an agent. Buyer and seller were in contract on a home. Inspection showed that the roof had some wear and tear and likely needed some light repairs. The rest of the home was in good shape. Inspections did show, however, that the existing roof only had 3 to 8 years left, but not so bad. Here's the hiccup. The buyer asked for a completely new roof. Now, I have no idea what the seller said, but the agent did update the post to let us know that the buyer backed out. So I'm assuming that the seller didn't agree to those requests. As the market shifts towards neutral, potentially heading to just a straight buyer's market, I think that we're going to see more and more of this type of situation. Buyers have a chip on their shoulder, and I completely understand, especially after the last 2 years of price gouging that they've had to endure during the height of the pandemic. But I'm not sure this is the best way to go. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Yeah? So, in my mind, the buyer's request for an entirely new roof was above and beyond what the seller should be required to do. As an outside observer, my gut reaction is that if the buyer was willing to walk away from the deal they had, they may not have been serious about purchasing that particular property to begin with. If I were counseling my client, I would tell them to ask for the repairs to the roof, but asking for a whole new roof, it's just being a little greedy. Similarly, if I were the listing agent, I would certainly advise the sellers to make the repairs to their roof to increase the longevity, but not necessarily replace the whole roof unless an inspection found that it was necessary. We do know that there are still more buyers out there than there are homes for sale. Eventually, the right one will come along. So, what should buyers reasonably ask for in a request for repairs? There are two primary items that immediately come to mind. One, obviously, anything health and safety related. And two, Section 1 items as identified in the pest inspection. Section 1 items are things like dry rot around windows, rafters, the rafters that are near the roof, of course, termites, beetles, that kind of thing. Those should always be taken care of. And really, it should be okay to ask, even when the seller says that it is an as is sale. If the seller refuses, then maybe they aren't that interested in selling and they need to have a chat with the listing agent. Fences around decks and or pools might be an example of a health and safety issue, especially if called by an FHA or VA appraiser. So changing gears, over the last couple of weeks, I've been working with a first-time home buyer who's looking at all their options. They're trying for a traditional mortgage, but unfortunately, student loans may be in the way. But they do have to move, so we're going to explore every option. And one of the things that they're looking at is the rent to own model. I've never really closely looked, or I've never really looked that closely into the system. I had attempted to help someone about 7 or 8 years ago, but it didn't really pan out. And it's kind of jaded things. It's because the guy was kind of shady and wasn't serious. And this is what we see a lot. But that was then. So I decided to approach it with an open mind and take a closer look to see what it's all about. And it's gotten better. It's not as shady as it used to be. Under the right circumstances, I think that it could even be a relatively good program. There are several models out there, but the one that I've been looking at with my client is zero down. They purchased a home listed for sale on the MLS for cash. There's a starter payment of 3%. This is essentially the earnest money deposit. Once escrow closes, you move in. A portion of your rent goes towards a down payment. There's a lease option to purchase the home after 3 years, although they do say that you can walk away at any time. There's a lot to unpack while looking at the website, and tons of questions that really kind of come up for me. And I can say that the good folks on Reddit have deemed it false advertising. because you do have to put some money down. And overall, not a great deal because you're certainly paying above market rent, although maybe not so much in some of the areas that I've been looking in. Um, but you aren't getting the same proportion back towards your deposit if you're paying like above market rent. And so this last one is a little bit harder for me to swallow. But hey, it's a business and I understand they have to make their money too. Rent to own isn't right for everyone, but it's still worth taking a closer look at, especially for those of us with major student loans and who can't necessarily jump on the GoFundMe or Power Buyer bandwagon for a hefty down payment. So that's all for this week's Lunch Bites. I'll be back next week where I'm going to delve into house hacking. Exciting stuff. Have a great day.